Okay. So
Okay.
we're supposed to do that presentation, Rich Jackson.
Oh, yeah. Were any of you in LD for your first breakout room yesterday?
I was.
You were. So you've already seen the presentation.
Mhm.
Okay. We're gonna go through that again
Yeah, we'll
because Sid
probably,
told
I
us
mean, all
after.
three of you have like pretty high experience with debates, so we're not gonna, focus on like the more basic parts of it.
Mhm.
Praj, have you ever been in an LD round, like watched an LD round, debated an LD round?
No, I haven't. Not yet.
Okay. Are you interested in doing LD in this year or?
I mean, if my partner's out, sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, we'll just talk about LD strictly then.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you
I
want me to
got
share
you,
my
Sid.
screen with you?
What's that?
Do you want me to do the presentation
Yeah,
off
yeah,
of my
that'd
screen
be
again? Okay.
helpful.
Got it. And then, can people see this?
I can
Yes.
see it.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
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 So even though Rajiv and I both do policy now, we both did LD our freshman year, and I've done it like off and on whenever our partners aren't available. So we're pretty good at teaching people LD. Um, it's individual. He got about 45-minute rounds, so about the same length as a PF round or half the length of a policy round. It's a lot more of a philosophical type debate. So unlike PF, we are just debating this is good versus this is bad. There's also another level of debate, which is like how do we determine what is good and how do we determine what is bad. Praj, with your experience, I know you don't have a lot of experience with them, but kind of think about a lot of the type of literature you might see in something like a critique that might come up in LD more so than it would in one PF. One side firm, one side the gates. You guys understand how resolutions work. Some person or group has an obligation to do something. That's how the resolutions are framed. Here are the speech times.
Yeah.
Um,
When you talk
so
about these, I think it might be a good idea to discuss the sort of strategic goals of each speech, even
yeah,
though there
yeah,
are so
okay.
few, and like what we're trying to do. So the 1AC, the first speech of the debate, 6 minutes long, right? Remember that just like in policy, Paraj, the affirmative speaks first and last here. So what do you think, and this is an open question, would be like some of the goals of the 1AC? Not all at
And
once.
if you guys just want to leave yourselves unmuted because this is a smaller group, just
Yeah.
chime in whenever you want to talk. It's fine.
Just like make your case and get as many points across as possible. Like, well, obviously, so that the neg can't refute all of them while still making their case.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think when you're making those points? What are you trying to prove?
That you're right and that your framework is good and that your points are better than anything that they would come up with.
Sure. I mean, but like, what are your points like saying? Like your points, you're trying to prove your points are true, but what do you want your points to like prove or say in the 1AC?
Like, what's the role of the affirmative? What are they supposed to do?
To say that the resolution is good.
Yeah. So I would say the main goal of the 1AC is to provide some reasons that the resolution might be a good idea. So that's sort of a functional idea of what the 1AC should be. I think it's also important to discuss a strategic conception of what the 1AC should be. So a lot of the times when you're deciding, you're building a case, right? You're writing a case. You don't know what to include in your 1AC, and you don't know, like what might be better reserved for like a rebuttal. And so I would say a good rule of thumb is any sort of like card, any justification that you include for your arguments in the 1AC, if you're finding in your rounds that it's not coming up in the 1AR, it's never coming up in the 2AR, it's never providing you any argumentative value beyond the first time you say it, it's probably not an effective use of your time in the 1AC. So like, for example, if in the 1AC you read like 5 pieces of evidence about how like Saudi Arabia is like an authoritarian regime, and then in none of your debates is that point contested, right? That might help you prove that the affirmative is a good idea, right? Whatever, if the affirmative is like cutting sales to Saudi Arabia, it's probably a bad example. But anyway, but if it's not something that's being contested so much in your rounds, you don't want to spend as much time on it. So the goal of the 1AC is to make your other speeches easier. because, in the middle part of this debate, the negative will have 13 minutes of speaking time, and like after the 1AC, the AF will just have 7. So to make up for that, you sort of have to include arguments that would help you later on in the round. I don't know if you have anything to add, Jackson.
No, not really. I think the point Rajiv made about if stuff isn't coming up, then like cut it and make your case more efficient is good. I know we both did LD as a freshman. I never really got the hang of that, but I think that lesson is useful in all forms of debate. Where like if you just read like 4 cards, which is like Saudi bad, and no one is saying Saudi good, then you can probably move those to a back file. Where like if you need them, you have them, but you can make like if one of your cards is really getting hammered in every single round, if you can add some more substance to that, I think that's a good idea. Proj coming from policy, the cross-ex is how you're used to, is just one side asking all the questions. If you're coming from PF, then it's not like that. You're not going back and forth. It's just one side asking the other side questions, and then they have to answer.
Yep. I would say, this is sort of a general question, but in a cross-examination, and particularly say in the cross-examination of the 1AC, what do you think your goal is? Like, what are you trying to do?
You're trying to set up your 1NC arguments by making the
Yep.
1AC trying to like concede points, and like you can
Yeah.
like break up the cross in the 1.
That's the answer I wanted. Yep. So the strategic value of cross-examination comes from ways in which you're going to try to set up your 1NC arguments. So if you're going to, use some example or like thought experiment or whatever to disprove their framework, you might want to, ask them about that in cross-examination to see what, their like philosophy might think about it. Or if you're trying to get a link into some, like argument that you're going to make, you can ask them about, like whether or not like some consequent of something that they read will, allow them to, or will cause them to concede that link. So that's the strategic value of cross-examination. I also think that in a lot of cases, people don't have a proper understanding of their opponent's case even after it's read. And so there is a sort of personal flowing type use of cross-examination where you can use it for clarification of the case. But naturally, you want to spend as little time on that section as possible.
I have a question.
Go.
Yeah, go.
Is there like topicality, or is it just like one yes or no? Because like in like policy, there's like a bunch of different affirmatives, because it's all under like the one resolved like resolution. But
Yeah.
is this more like yes or no, and there's no like in between like for topicality?
So what I would say is that what you're going to see in local debate is teams are going to defend the whole resolution. So like, yeah, it'll be just like in PF or like, any other debate event other than policy, where they defend the resolution as a general principle, right? Not some necessarily specific implementation of it. I think that on the circuit, especially, this year we'll have online tournaments. You might get to go to some of those. There will be teams who treat LD more like policy, which for you, Proud, should be fine. You'd just be in your wheelhouse probably. But yeah, sometimes teams, rather than defending the whole resolution, will just defend some plan that falls under it, like some specific implementation of it in like one country through one mechanism, whatever, to sort of gain a competitive advantage. Sometimes, as you know, teams choose not to affirm the resolution because they like to cheat. And yeah, so they'll do that sometimes.
At least locally, you'll never have to worry about that. A team will just go up and say the resolution is good, and you will just go up and say it's bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
On
Any
to
other,
the
yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Any other questions before we move on?
Okay.
Cool.
Onto the 1NC. So in LD, just like essentially every other debate event, I mean, some people can like argue about this whether or not it should be in PF with the rebuttals, but essentially anything not responded to is considered dropped and given full weight. So the negative constructive not only has to lay out their own like framework and like why they think voting negative is a good idea, they also have to respond to the entire affirmative constructive and why the AF said like the voting AF is a good idea. So generally, the way you'll see that broken down is neg will spend about 4 to 5 minutes on their own case and 2 to 3 minutes on responding to the affirmative's case.
So they have to prove why both that the plan is bad and how the affirmative's version of the plan is bad as well. or whatever the result.
Yeah, like Praj, essentially think of it exactly as a policy 1NC, right? You have your off case that respond to the AF.
And
That's
then
kind
your
of the
on
negative
case.
case, and then you have
Yeah.
direct responses. Is anyone here coming from PF? Emily, are you coming from PF?
Nope.
No. Okay. So no one here really does PF. In PF, some teams argue that you have two constructed speeches and then two rebuttal speeches. Some people say that the rebuttals, if your second rebuttal, you shouldn't have to respond to first rebuttal. You should just have to respond to your opponent's case. But in LD, because there are so few
Yeah.
speeches, anything said in the last speech, if it isn't responded to, it's dropped. So answer everything, and you'll be fine.
Yep. So I would say this is again an open question. I think it'll lead to a good conversation. When you're choosing what arguments to put in your 1NC, and of course this is a partially prepared, partially unprepared speech. So part of this occurs within the round and part of it occurs out of the round. Like what types of things are you thinking about, and what type of arguments are you going to try to make that'll have strategic value in the round? So like what are you thinking about when you're saying this is an argument I want to include, this is an argument I don't want to include? And we can sort of break this into two parts if you want. We can talk about what you want to include in your negative case and what you want to include in your responses to the affirmative case.
I mean,
so-
dissad, right? I mean,
Wait, what's that, Praj?
disadvantages or dissad?
So, I mean, the way
Is that a
that
thing?
Lincoln Douglas cases are structured, typically there's only like one case, right? It's like one sheet of paper, so it's not like multiple off-case positions. But
Okay.
yeah, so like why don't you describe the role of a disadvantage, and I'll say why that is something you should be doing on your negative case. Like what does
Basically,
a
a
disadvantage do?
A disadvantage is something that says that, let's say, I would say the Russia fill-in dissad is, I don't know if the other people know, but basically it's just dissad is something that says that this is something that'll happen that would basically undermine the plan in a way.
So okay, I mean, like a disadvantage, right, is sort of the opposite of an advantage so like what is the goal of a disadvantage? Like what you said, the Russia fill-in disadvantage, right? So what is that disadvantage saying?
It's saying that if we were to end sales to Saudi Arabia, Russia would fill in and give their own arms and ammunition towards Saudi Arabia, and then that in
Sure.
turn would cause the devastation in Yemen and
Yeah,
so
so
on.
basically you're saying some effect of what the affirmative is advocating for. In this case, in LD, we're
It
talking about the
causes
risk.
another bad thing to happen.
Yeah, it causes a bad thing to happen. So that's something you wanna do in Lincoln Douglas on your case. You wanna have arguments that prove that the resolution is a bad idea, right?
So
Similar
they're
to the
saying
1AC.
if it's good, so whatever the resolution is saying, so if like they're saying something is good, and you're saying that if that thing is good, then this other bad thing will happen that's much worse.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily just like that's the way the disadvantages are often presented within policy. I'm just sort of abstracting this to like be more just about offense and defense, which is just something that I'll implicitly talk about. You don't necessarily have to know what those terms are. But yeah, so like the goal of your case is always to, fulfill your resolutional burden, right? So as the affirmative, that's going to be proving that the resolution is good, most likely, because it has some good effects or, whatever your particular moral framework is. Whereas, yeah, so like that on the negative, you're trying to prove that the resolution is false or bad, or, like the opposite of what the AF is saying, basically. So that's what you want to do on your negative case. Similarly, you don't want to waste time. You don't want to include cards that don't show up in your 2 NRs typically. And when you're responding to the affirmative case, what do you think are some things that you should keep in mind, or like what you're thinking about?
Like, you want to respond to a lot of things. Like, you want to, like I said earlier, you want to respond well, but you don't want to drop anything.
Yeah, that's good. So because like I think this is particularly important. The affirmative case is pretty much all offense, right? They have said for 6 minutes, they have just listed reasons why, the resolution is good. So in any debate, in any speech, you don't want to drop any sort of piece of offense like that, because it gives the other team a very easy way to say like, look, we have fulfilled our resolutional burden without any opposition, right? In this case, sort of by saying like there is a reason why the resolution is a good idea. So yeah, definitely don't drop any part of the case. I think that's true.
And when we say don't drop any part, that doesn't mean you have to like respond to every single thing, but make sure you have a response on every single argument. So you don't have to
Yeah.
respond to every part of an argument, but you have to make sure you have something everywhere on the flow.
Right. So like if the AF says something like what's like an LD topic. If the AF says that like seriously, I forget all the LD topics.
Nukes.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. If the AF says that like getting rid of nuclear weapons prevents miscalculation, which currently would cause like a war between the United States and Russia to be inevitable. You don't need to disprove every part of that. You don't need to be like nuclear weapons don't exist, miscalculation is impossible. Like like you just need to have some argument. Like you could say a war between the U.S. and Russia is unlikely because of diplomacy or something like that, right? You need to have some answer against it, so you have some defense, when you're looking from your 2NR. Also, I think something that's important when you're responding to the affirmative case is that, in general, your goal in any speech should be to make your opponent's next speech difficult. And this is particularly true when it comes to the 1NC, because what comes after the 1NC is the 1AR, which I'm sure in your experience you found you come under severe time pressure in the 1AR, because you're responding to a lot of arguments in a very short amount of time. And so a good way to do that is by having threatening arguments on the affirmative case. And a way to do that is by reading offensive arguments. So we've sort of discussed what an offensive argument really is. It's just anything that helps you prove that the resolution is true or false or good or bad, right? So if you're the negative, saying that miscalculation is unlikely if the affirmative reads a miscalculation event or a contention about miscalculation, that doesn't help you win the debate, right? And the affirmative, if they wanted, could spend less time on that argument. They could even ignore that argument if they didn't want to go for their miscalculation or contention.
I think one thing that's important to understand,
Go for it.
and I'm just saying this because I had a lot of trouble, as Rajiv knows, initially beginning understanding offense and defense, which is that obviously, like if they drop that argument, that does quote unquote help you win the debate, but it's not like an independent reason to vote for you. So the difference, the kind of like dichotomy between offense defense is it a reason to vote for you, or is it just a reason to not vote for them?
Yeah. So like typically like the affirmative, like say on the affirmative case, right? They have a bunch of reasons why the plan or why the resolution is a good idea. So if your response to that is like, well, those reasons aren't true, or what you've said is unlikely to happen, it's improbable, or it's not important. That's all example of a defensive argument, right? And if they drop that argument, sure, it might be true that you've said like, this is impossible, this contention is totally improbable, it has no value. But simply proving that their contentions have no value doesn't help you win the debate, right? You need to prove that there is some reason that the resolution is bad, right, as the negative. That's how you win the debate, not simply just by like, reducing all of their arguments to zero. But sometimes when you're responding to their arguments, you can like turn their arguments to your side. So you could say that having nuclear weapons actually prevents miscalculation or prevents the likelihood of escalation in a war because of something like deterrence, right? And if that were your response to a miscalculation, contention, then the affirmative would need to pay serious attention to that response, because if they drop that response, it doesn't just mean that they don't get access to their contention. It means that you basically get the full weight of another contention for your side, right? It's as if you read a third, it's as if you read an additional contention if they drop it, that basically just, like wins you the game, right? Because it scores you points. It helps you prove what you're trying to prove in debate, very basically, rather than simply just getting rid of their points. So yeah, Jackson, you want to say something?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you said something. But anyway, if you include more offensive arguments in your 1NC, it can make it very difficult for the 1AR to handle all of those, because like it's a hard speech for time management.
I'm guessing you can also get away with the fact that like if the 2AR brings up new points in like the end speech, you can like get away with saying that don't let the 2AR bring up new points because that'd be unfair. Like
Yeah,
same
in
thing
like
with
flow
like,
rounds, that's sort of just like assumed. But yeah,
okay, yeah,
so
that makes sense.
like one thing that you should be cognizant of is that if I can't draw a line from like, and maybe this is the exception would be arguments in the 2NR that respond to new arguments in the 1AR. But if I can't draw a line in your final speech to your previous speech to the place where you said that, then I really can't vote on it, even if it's like really well explained in your final speech because of sort of the rules of debate. So yeah, I mean, now that we've discussed how to make the 1AR hard, what are some strategies you think that you can employ while giving the 1AR to make it easy? Like, or maybe a better starting point would be, what are some problems that you typically face when giving a 1AR?
I'm
Okay.
trying to like get all the points across in a limited amount of time. So I would say solve that. You just like have to break up each section into given a certain amount of time for each one. And then
Okay,
move on.
wait, so you said that there are too many, like there are a lot of arguments you have to extend, right? I think
Mhm.
that's a good problem to bring up. Silas and Emily, you guys have any thoughts?
Yeah,
Like,
you have
yeah.
to. Okay, in that time, like you have to extend your older arguments, and except you also have to be able to um, argue against all of the negative offense and defense
Yeah.
also if you can. That's like more
Yeah, I
than
got you.
that's like
Silence kind of
25
in and out a bit for
Yeah,
anyone else.
you sound
Yeah.
kind of like your mic sounds drunk. It's had a few too many.
It sounds like you're speaking at like 0.5 speed. It's really weird.
Might be your
Yeah,
earbuds.
glitching a bit.
All right. Well, while that's resolved, Emily, you have anything to add about your experiences?
Like try to, I don't know, I didn't do very well on the 1AR usually, but just do your best to defend your arguments first and then get to theirs, because you'll have more time to get to theirs later, but you have to like make sure that you're carrying yours.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I think that an important part of understanding how to give a good 1AR is understanding what's important in the debate round, right? And what it comes down to are reasons why the resolution is good to reasons why the resolution are bad, right? When the judge is deciding the debate. So, like Emily brings up, I would say the most important thing in the 1AR is to make sure you have some offense, some reason why the resolution is good, when you're, that you've extended that could be in your 2AR. Because if you spend all of your time on your opponent's case, you don't get to your own case, you don't have any offense on your opponent's case, then there's like no reason that the resolution is a good idea that you've extended, and you can't win the debate. It's impossible. Like you cannot win. So that's, the case is your baby. Don't drop your baby. The second thing that I would say is that you need to understand which arguments that the negative is making that are sort of most threatening, right? And as we've sort of established, the more threatening arguments tend to be not the defensive arguments, the one that say, oh, you can mitigate the value of the affirmative case, it's like small, but the offensive arguments. And part of that is the negative case, which is always going to be offense. And part of that can be offensive arguments that they make against your case. Which brings me to the third point, I think, which is the most critical part of giving a 1AR, and something that Praj alluded to, is time allocation. And so, like all of you said, you have a lot of stuff to answer, right? A lot of stuff that you've identified that you need to respond to. Some of the stuff, sometimes it's good to just concede out of. It's better to just like not, if you have like 3 contentions for your affirmative and they spent like, 2 minutes in the 1NC just pummeling one of the contentions, maybe it's best to just concede that, concede some defense on it. So, because, you only have a limited amount of time. So sometimes the choice for time allocation should be 0, but you should determine what the most threatening arguments are, and you should spend some more time on them, because you can probably get away with giving some blippy response if like, their argument that they made probably isn't going to have much consequence on the debate. So if, you're debating the value structure and they're just like, governments can't be moral actors, you can just be like, well, like we have to make a moral decision, so yes, they can. And, that's like pretty blippy and, not necessarily the most fleshed out response. But if you have bigger fish to fry elsewhere, on the page, or even on the negative case, I think that it's important to recognize which arguments are most important in the 1AR, and that'll help you overcome some of your time and strategy troubles.
I think the one really big thing to get your head around is that not all opposing arguments are created equal. There are arguments that are just more threatening, like at a technical like offense defense level. But there's also arguments that are just like, what does the negative want to talk about for 6 minutes, right? So even if like on paper they make this really out there argument that technically scores them a lot of points, but in reality, like, do they really want to go for that one? Probably not if they have a better option anywhere else on the flow. Learning how to like put yourself in the head of the negative and see forward to what they're going to value the most, that's where you want to put more of your responses.
Yeah. And that becomes easier the more you debate in general, and particularly the more you debate a topic, because that can help you recognize which arguments are most threatening. Also, like sometimes we're talking about these very abstract ideas like strategic vision and stuff like that. Basically, what it means is, like Jackson said, you're trying to imagine the end of the round, right? Even if you're just in an early part of it. So you're trying to imagine, what would the 2NR be? What would their most strategic option be? And what would my most strategic option against that most strategic option be, right? And then you want to prioritize extending responses, or sort of, making responses that put you in a good place for your final rebuttal. Because, you can be like ahead on the flow for all of the debate, but if you don't have access to like persuasive arguments that answer your opponent's arguments in your final rebuttal, or if you simply don't extend them, it'll be difficult to win the debate, because it always comes down to the arguments that are in the final rebuttal. Those are the ones that, win or lose you the debate. So yeah, any questions?
No? Okay.
Yeah, and please like stop me if this is like too dense, because like I have a tendency to do so. But anyway, we can talk about the 2NR now. So the 2NR is the negative's last speech, right? So it is a final rebuttal. So the aspects that you're looking for in a final rebuttal are going to be like prioritizing things like weighing, obviously, prioritizing showing why your offense outweighs. But a weird thing in LD is that it's also, it's like the 4th speech in the debate, and it's the 2nd time you're speaking. So you might have to be making new arguments in response to new 1AR arguments, right? So typically, I would say that part of the 2NR is just like making sure that on the options that you're going for, on the line by line, that you're covered, right? You're sufficiently covered. You're extending the technical responses that help you set up what you want your speech to really be about. Another thing that I would say is that a mistake that a lot of LD debaters make is, because you have 6 minutes, you're just going to extend every argument that you ever made in this speech. And oftentimes that's not strategic. What's more strategic is looking at what the 1AR undercovered and saying, like, this is what I'm going to spend all my time on in this speech. Because if you have 3 contentions on the negative and you're winning one of them by a lot, you really don't need to win the other 2. You don't have to go through that struggle. You can spend your time in the 2NR being like super crystal clear on why you are winning that particular issue, why it outweighs any of their issues, and like, whatever like good defense you might have against the offense that you think they're going to go for. But I would say, yeah, go ahead.
just for Praj, like imagine if in the block the negative extended everything from the 1NC and didn't kick a single off case, right? That'd be stupid, right? Why would you do that? You're not going to want to try to collapse down to 5 options. You want to collapse down to like 1 to 3 options.
Yeah. And that's a general thing for all forms of debate. You want to start with broader arguments. You want to have multiple options open because it makes it more difficult for your opponent to respond to, right? Because they have to cover all these different possibilities for your final rebuttal. But when it comes time for your final rebuttal, and even just like throughout the debate in every speech, I think your argument should be getting narrower. You should be choosing the best ones from the previous speeches and abandoning the ones that, you don't really have hope for, giving you any sort of strategic value later on in the round. So yeah, like you don't need to extend everything. Like I know that a lot of people, like particularly if you're getting started in debate, it might feel counterintuitive because like as debaters, our idea is like, oh, we should question everything, we should respond to everything, we need to cover everything. Oftentimes, whether you're in a very technical round or even in front of a lay judge, the most important thing is to emphasize the most important thing, rather than simply cover everything. And yeah, I guess the 2AR, I would say very similar to the second half of what the 2NR should be. So most of the line-by-line debating has already been done. So just think about what offense do I have access to? What reasons are the strongest that I have that the resolution are good, or that the resolution is good? And how can I show that those, based on the arguments that I've already made, how can I contextualize them? How can I crystallize them to show that they are more important than whatever argument or arguments the negative chose to go for that show why the resolution is a bad idea. And yeah, that like weighing, right? That's a very important part of debate. It's what most debates come down to, because both sides are going to have some reason, why their side is good or why their side should be winning. It's just like, can you compare those two effectively, and can you effectively show why yours is more important? Is what final rebuttals are all about.
So do we have any questions regarding any of that, even if it's just like a word we use that you guys don't fully know? Nope. Okay.
Cool.
Any questions, Rajiv?
I mean, I guess we should probably contextualize this, particularly because we have two people who debated LD for a full season. So like, what are problems that I think, like, obviously I can give you advice in the abstract, but if you have examples of like rounds where like a particular speech you think like really sets you behind in the debate, or like, maybe even puts you ahead, we can like talk about those and like sort of say like, what the strategy might be in future rounds.
We do realize the season ended like 6 months ago.
We do.
So if you guys don't remember the specifics of any rounds, that's fine.
Silas, nothing?
Question.
Yeah, question.
Can you do like new weighing in the 2AR?
Can there be new weighing in the 2AR? That's probably a good question. I don't know really what weighing is. I think there needs to be the warrant for why the weighing is true probably needs to be in the 1AR. I don't think the comparison needs to be made until the 2AR. So like, for example, if you're reading like a nuke war impact and you want to go for like extinction outweighs, then I think you need to say like nuke war causes extinction in the 1AR. I don't think you need to say extinction outweighs in the 1AR. That can be saved for the 2AR. But the warrant for why, or like the internal link needs to be at least handled in the 1AR.
Okay.
Yeah.
In reality, it's all about how you frame your arguments. If you make it sound like a new argument, the judge might treat it as a new argument. If you're listing off warrants for why a thing is true and you sneak an extra little one in there, there's a good chance that'll slip by.
You can like gaslight judges into thinking that they've heard something before. Just because like they might associate certain warrants with the argument that you made. Like if you were, I don't know, if you were like reading an argument about like Medicare or something, or I don't know, like single payer healthcare, and like you were listing some common reasons why it's bad in like one long card, and like say you didn't talk about costs, but like, you know, it was a big laundry list. You can just be like, oh, healthcare fails for a litany of reasons. Like they have pretty much no and you can just like sneak it in there if you want. But yeah.
Especially if like it's near the end of a topic, like especially on the nuclear topic. Let's say you didn't like. Let's say you're neg, and or sorry, let's say you're AF, and you didn't really talk about miscalc as like a reason that like nuclear war could happen. If you in the 2AR were to be like, nuclear war is inevitable for a litany of reasons, we explain that to you in the 1AC, miscalculation is inevitable, we're all going to go up in a ball of flames, right? Like, even if you didn't read a card about miscalc, like a judge understands what that is and like what the topic is.
Yeah.
At which point, sneaking in those extra warnings can be helpful. But if you're reading like a new piece of evidence, then they'll be like, oh, wait a second, that's new. You're not allowed to do that. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
do that.
Oftentimes people read framing tricks, which intentionally are like sandbagged, particularly in like policy. So like people will read like a card in the 2AC that's like extinction from capitalism is inevitable. And then in the 1AR, you're just like, boom, I don't care about any of your extinction impacts anymore. Ha, you dropped my framing trick. And then so yeah, that's like, I guess there's probably some LD equivalent of that, but I don't know.
Okay, let's move along in the presentation. That did not work. That's the video.
I feel like, yeah,
That's-
cases.
You guys,
Raj, are
yeah,
you familiar with sort of how like values and value criterions work? Value criteria.
What do you
we never
mean?
really explained value criterions yesterday.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about them now, I guess. So obviously,
We don't really have a page for that.
no, I mean I was just on the framework
Yeah.
page.
Sure, we'll leave a blank page.
Okay, sure.
Or we can get a framework.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, like, obviously, you're probably familiar with what contentions are. They're just reasons again that the plan is or that the resolution is good or bad. Framework is a sort of unique part. Framework has a lot of meanings if you use it in policy. In LD, it normally refers to just a sort of philosophical justification for impact calculus is the best way I would think about it. And that takes the form of two parts. So the first would be the value. It's just some like ethical concept that you believe you should value within a round, which can be as vacuous as morality itself, or something really specific like due process or positive peace at Silas. Yeah, then like that's some useful goal that we can achieve. And then second, to measure that is the value criterion, which is some standard, some ethical standard that proves whether or not we're achieving that. So like some like measuring stick for like justice might be like due process under the law, or a measuring stick for morality might be like a utilitarianism, right? Or trying to maximize the most good for the greatest number, right? So those are all ways to instrumentally determine if you are achieving your value or not. And yeah, I would say, again, since this is sort of more of a strategic lecture where we talk about strategy, there are two sort of approaches to framework, or maybe at least like a directional understanding of framework. So the more specific your framework is to your contentions, typically the harder it is to win that your framework is true. Like, for example, if you say like, oh, we should always prioritize like domestic violence, right? And you're the only team who reads anything about domestic violence. It'll be difficult if the other team is like, oh, here are other instances of violence that we should also consider, right? But if you do win your framework, then it becomes really easy to win the debate, right? Because you read a big domestic violence contention, and like that proves that you meet, under your framework, you should win the debate if domestic violence is the only impact that matters. On the other hand, the more general the framework that you read, the easier it is to win the framework itself. Like it would probably be fairly easy to win a debate about utilitarianism or the veil of ignorance, or like even something like Kant's moral imperative, because there are sort of very established moral lines of reasoning for why that's true. But once you've won that, it becomes more difficult to win the debate than in the other scenario, because your opponent is more likely to be able to access offense through your impact filter. So say you're just reading utilitarianism, which is like the most good for the greatest number. Naturally, the negative has read something which is like the resolution causes something bad. So that'll always be weighed under your weighing mechanism. So when you're writing your case, I think it's important to consider how specific you want your framework to be, and sort of what your end goal is in, like, if you win framework, I want to accomplish this. And like that's how you should choose your framework, how you should choose how much time you spend on framework, and how you should probably determine your contentions as well.
Yeah, I think kind of to piggyback off of what Rajiv said with a more specific example, if you have one team which is like, we should do util, and another team that's like, we should do domestic violence. Oh, sorry, we should not do domestic violence. We should value
Jackson, this
stopping
meeting is
domestic
being
violence.
recorded.
I know, that's the worst part. And if the team saying that we should end domestic violence, if they lose the framework level, right, they could probably give you a pretty good reason as to why domestic violence is like bad under utilitarianism, right? But it's pretty hard. It's that's why it's like pretty easy for the util team to win. They're like, we're more general. We include like a much broader like philosophical framework. But if the util team lost framework to the domestic violence team, if their case does not talk about domestic violence, and then the other team does, the other team is just going to win. Like, you really don't have any mechanism to win under their framework. And that's kind of the trade-off Rajiv was talking about, where a more specific framework, if you win, makes it easier for you to win that your contentions should win you the round.
Right.
And it allows, but it also like means you're more likely to lose framework and then have to fit your way under your opponents, which they spent, a couple minutes crafting a case that fits under their framework.
Yeah. And that should, I mean, we talked about time allocation, but that understanding should definitely affect your time allocation. Like, say you're reading like a libertarian framework, which is just like, it's bad when the government does things. You could spend like 90% of your speech just being like, it's bad when the government does things. And then have one contention with one card, which is like, if you vote for the other team, the government does a thing. So don't vote for them. And so like, yeah, like you just at that point need to win that it's bad for the government to do things, which is probably more difficult to win. But because, if you win it, you kind of like automatically win the debate. It makes a lot of sense to invest a lot of time into it, if that's going to be your strategy. And there are merits and drawbacks to all of these strategies, which is why it's good to try them out and see what you're more comfortable with and what's strategic on a given topic, or, in front of a given judge against a given opponent. Yeah.
Any questions? Okay. I think the rest of this presentation is just like
Basic
debate stuff that we kind of did yesterday.
Yeah.
Flowing is really important. LD, please, we will, if the season, if we ever meet in person, I imagine, I know I'm going to want to work with a lot of you guys on flowing better, because I think that right now, I see a lot of people who come back to me and they're like, oh, my round was so bad. And then I look at their flow and I'm like, well, I don't know if it was bad because I don't know what happened in this round. And it's not just for showing people afterwards. It's for being able to, glance at your flow in the middle of the debate, see like 3 words, and know immediately what argument is happening and what you have to say to respond to it. That's a skill you develop over time, especially in LD when essentially every speech is almost under a time crunch. Like, there's no real equity in any of the speeches. Having to have an efficient flow is definitely necessary.
Yep. And I think also one thing that tends to happen, particularly if you flow in too much of a longhand, is that you don't have enough specificity on each part of the argument that's being made, which often becomes really important. Because say that, you have a multi-layer, you have a contention that involves a variety of internal links, right? Like just using the example from earlier, miscalculation, right? The premise of that contention is that miscalculation is likely now for a certain reason. If we took nuclear weapons away, then miscalculation would become less likely, and that miscalculation would be bad because it would result in a nuclear war that would like end all life on Earth. And so that is a multi-parted contention. But sometimes what I'll see on flows is just contention 1, miscalculation, and then the next thing I see is contention 2, piece. I don't know, but like, rather than, you just sort of have a like top level understanding of what the contention is saying, probably, but because the contention itself is multi-layered, responses are often going to be multi-layered, and you want to have access to each layer on your flow when you're coming up with a response. Because if you know that your 1AC says that the reason that miscalculation is likely is because of the number of nuclear states, then you're not going to like know that if you look down at your flow and it just says miscalculation. You're going to know that if it says like uniqueness, high number of nuclear states leads to miscalculation. And that'll help you be more efficient when you're giving responses in rebuttals. So that's one reason that flowing is important. But yeah, flowing, I would say, I don't know. I don't know what an example of like, also use more spacing than you do and write smaller than you do. Like that's just like everyone writes too big and doesn't leave enough space between arguments. Should leave more space.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know an LD, but
you should, because like people respond to one argument with two arguments,
fair
and
enough.
then people respond to each of those arguments with two arguments, and so that makes flows get messy. But yeah.
Sid is telling me to move into the general debate presentation.
Yeah,
but-
I would probably cover.
Oh, he's here.
And then move to the general debate. It's talked about flowing and cross-ex a lot more.
Oh wait, hold up. We have new guests. What's up? What's up, Dan? What's up, Yash?
They joined like
We have
a
new
No.
guests.
No, how long have they been here?
They've been here for a long time.
No.
Well, no, I swear, no. It was only showing 3 guests. Like I should have didn't see that. I had to expand my thing to see them.
So you were here while we were talking about the right mix of offense and defense in your 1AR. And yeah.
Sorry, we thought we were in a room full of all kids who have like done debate before.
Yeah, and specifically we've done LD. So yeah, we can go over more basic stuff.
Okay, yeah, let's go to the general how to debate presentation then, because that now seems important.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you
Yeah.
sure? Wait, sorry. How long have they been there?
I don't know, Daniel.
Long enough to try to digest some stuff that I don't understand.
Okay, fair enough.
Jackson, it's in the debate curriculum drive.
oh, okay.
General
Yeah.
debate.
The part 1 is flowing and cross-ex, and part 2 is weighing, argument mapping, and something else.
Okay.
I'm just gonna bring up the slide that's like the speeches. Okay. Dang. Sorry guys. We did not realize you were here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, don't be
let's-
scared. This.
Yes, especially people ask questions. Like it's not a problem. Like nobody understood all of this the first time they heard it, or the second time, or like after 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody really understands debate.
Nice. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Let's make it up. Okay. Oh, jargon. This is you have a general jargon slide with only 4 things on it. What is this, Sid?
These first 3 things are the most important part of any debate event. Yeah, like that's just something that I'll say right now. And so if you're making a full argument, it always needs to have 3 parts, right? So say I want to win an argument where I'm saying that if the United States were to provide healthcare to all its citizens, less people would die. Okay, so that's my argument. So on face, that statement that I just made would be a claim, right? It is a summary of the argument. It describes the assumption, like if the United States were to adopt like a healthcare policy that provided healthcare to all people, and then it has a consequent, which is like less people would die. So that's a claim. The next part of an argument that makes it a complete argument is a warrant. and it is a reason why that argument is true. So one of the reasons that I might say would be that a study published in Lancet found that if the United States were to pass the Medicare for All Act, there would be 72,000 fewer preventable deaths per year in America. And so that would be a sort of study that I cited. The warranting in it would, of course, be that if people have access to healthcare, they are more likely to go to the doctor or the hospital when they get sick because they're not afraid of, the costs that are associated with it. And consequently, they wouldn't die as much. And so that would be a reason why it's true and sort of a source to back it up. So that's a warrant. And sometimes you can make warranted arguments that don't have sources or evidence behind them, as long as they make sense. And those are called analytic arguments. But anyway, the final part, and probably the part that I would say a lot of people tend to ignore, especially in the early parts of debates or their debating career even, would be the impact of a particular argument. So that basically boils down to, why do I care? And this has to do with the role of people within debate and the role of each side, each team. So generally, teams are arguing over the validity of a resolution. So if the resolution is saying something like the U.S. should pass the Medicare for All Act, then the question would be, if my argument is true, if the United States were to pass that act, less people would die. Why should that mean that the resolution is true? AKA, why should I, the judge, care? And a reason for that could be as simple as like, death is bad. And we should try to avoid death because it prevents people from living life and making free choices. But yeah, typically people tend to ignore this. And when an impact to an argument particularly matters is when you're comparing it to something else. So say you're looking at loss of life versus loss of civil liberties. How do those two things compare? The only way to really understand that is if each of those arguments has some sort of impact, some sort of terminalization, or some sort of understanding of why it matters from in the big picture. And so regardless of how big or how small the argument is that you're making, it should have a claim. Most arguments do. It should have a warrant. There should be some reason why it's true. And it should have an impact. There should be some reason that it's important to the debate. Because if it weren't important to the debate, why would you be talking about it? Yeah, that's it's pretty basic. Card is a word that people use to refer to evidence. Like something that someone else wrote about the topic, or someone else did a study, and you read it, and you want to cite it either through a direct quote or like a paraphrase sometimes. And so yeah, that's when you read a card.
Okay. Any questions on the jargon?
Also, since there are fewer of us, you all can you guys are fine to unmute if you want and just ask questions as they come.
Yeah, I think I understood it. Kind of.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, flowing! Exclamation point. So essentially what a flow is you're gonna take a piece of paper. Oh shoot, it's being mocked out by Zoom. This is a piece of paper. If I can like put it on top of myself, it won't get deleted. Yeah. So you're gonna take a piece of paper, generally one for each side. So you have like an aft piece of paper and a neg piece of paper. And this is how you're going to understand what's happening in the round. Now, initially, you might think, oh, I'll just keep track of everything in my head.
No.
There'll be like a couple of points made, and then like I'll just keep track of them and answer them. Don't do that. It won't work. No one has ever successfully done that. Ever. The way that flowing works essentially is you're going to propagate from left to right. You're going to start on one side, and you're going to say, okay, this is the 1AC. So if you go over to all of the speeches, right, here is the 1AC. Whether you're aft or neg, you need to have a flow of the 1AC. So if you're aft, you might want to write it before the round starts because you know the speech you're prepared to give because you've pre-written it. So you're going to write it down in a skinny column and in one color of ink. Let's say we're using blue for aft, whatever you want. Normally it's like cool tones aft, like warmer tones neg. That's just like
whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you. Rajiv likes to use like pink and brown. I don't like that he does that, but it's whatever.
just a word, blue and red G2 pens are much cheaper than the other
That is
colors.
true. That is true.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's also nice to have the full pack. You know, you can buy like one of the full packs, and then eventually you're going to lose all of your pens, and then you can switch to like the red and blue.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but the full pack is like $8. It's
Yeah,
that
that is
cost.
true.
You
That
get,
is
like
true.
24.
Look, I like to indulge sometimes. Sid.
Okay. So yeah, you're gonna in one column write down essentially all of the major arguments made in that round. So maybe like contention 1, this, like point 1, this. Here's a warrant for that point. Next, here's the next claim. Here's the warrant. Contention 2, and you're gonna go down for essentially for the entire speech. Then for the negative constructive, you're gonna need to get out your other piece of paper. So the negative constructive has to respond to what the affirmative said and also make like its own negative case for why the resolution is false. So normally that's split up in like a 4 minutes for like the negative case and 3 minutes for responding to the yeah. So for the first 4 minutes, you're going to have on a completely different piece of paper, writing down in the column, hey, here are all of the negatives arguments, right? Going down, let's say this time in red ink. And then for the next 3 minutes, when they're responding to the affirmative, you're going to get your affirmative sheet back out, and next to the blue, you're going to write in red the responses. So it's like, oh, the affirmative said that Medicare for all saves lives. The negative said right next to that, how actually it doesn't, because of like increased taxation will lead to people falling into poverty and that kills people, or Medicare leads to worse health outcomes. So that is a response that negates the point the affirmative made. It's not an independent reason to vote neg. It's not part of the neg case. You're just flowing it right next to it. So after the round, you can say, oh, the aff said this, the neg said this in response. And let's say you're in the middle of the round, you're trying to get ready for your 1AR, you're the affirmative, you're responding to the negative. You can say, oh, I made this point. This is what they said in response. So I can reiterate my first point with like new warrants that like directly counteract what my opponent's response is saying. And that's the basis of flowing. We have plenty of example flows just floating around that we can show people.
Yep.
Yeah, shorthand is nice. Depending on your event, you will all probably develop your own shorthand where, oh, exclamation mark is impact, capital R is like Republicans, or like NW is nuclear war, just whatever you want that works for you. Signposting is just something you do in the round. So obviously you're not going to have time necessarily in the round to type out all of the words you're going to say in your speech, especially for the later rebuttals. All you might have is your flow. So you're going to have to look at it and say, on this argument, I said this, they said this is why I'm right.
Yeah.
I said this, they said this is why I'm right. And you're going to be able to do that because you have a flow and you can see what you said and the warrants for why that was true. You're going to be able to see your opponent's response. And then you can, if you want to, in your prep time, write out responses next to that so you know, like, you can plan ahead for what you're going to want to say in your rebuttals.
Also, I would say one thing, especially if you're new to debate, that's important to make a distinction between is, like, say you might see like a presidential debate on TV. Both sides just sort of like one person says their point, and then the next person might respond to like one thing that they said and just like say their point again. But like what is necessary within competitive debate is a line by line refutation of basically all the stuff that your opponent said. And that's a very technical thing. You don't want to be like on, just some like very persuasive and like, like cool, 3-minute like train of thought about why your thing is good. You need to be very specific. So when you're responding to a contention, you might say like, on their first contention, in response to their first warrant, we have 3 responses, 1, 2, 3. 3 has 3 subpoints, A, B, C. And, just be very meticulous about that and meticulous about responding in a similarly details-oriented manner. And that's what flowing is most important for.
I'm trying to see if I have any lying around. I think I've recycled all of the ones from PF rounds with Ian. Do we have any questions generally about flowing? It makes a lot more sense if you get to see it in person.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess, we can maybe go back to the speech times, talk a little. Oh, what is this?
Oh, sorry.
No,
This
no,
is
you can go forward. What's card game time?
Have you never done the card game?
No.
What's the card game?
Oh, it's like, so like you practice flowing and you just use cards, and like physical like playing cards instead of arguments.
Oh, yeah, we have done that. But like, I don't know. I don't
I've
want to
done
do a
that.
speed drill with these guys.
Real
No,
practice.
it's not a speed drill. It's to practice flowing.
It's absolutely a speed drill.
Okay.
We did that with that girl from she was so fast. Oh my god. You remember, Jackson, the first day of SDI?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
And she
was
yelled
the
at me for my
Wayne State.
spacing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everyone yelled at me for my spacing. But that's,
Yeah.
Whatever.
Wait, yeah, I had a
Was she Ezra's partner or no?
No, she went to Wayne State. She was I don't know. She was one of B's kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that, Sid?
I had also like it was the thing that Silas had wrote earlier in the year to practice flowing from an actual speech. If you want to have them practice like shorthand and stuff.
I'll tell you what, I can do the cards. I'll pull up like a card RNG. And
Okay.
here's what you guys will have to do, okay? Are you ready?
Wait. Does everyone have like a pencil?
Yeah,
and
everyone
paper? I did
get-
not. For what it's worth, Rajiv and I are seeing this presentation for the first time as we're going through it because Sid made it. So
Why are you acting like that's a bad thing that I made it?
no, I not think it's a bad thing. I'm saying we didn't make it, so we're just playing this by ear.
Okay.
I have a deck of cards here if you want to just use that.
Oh, please, Sid. I trust atmospheric noise a little bit more than your shuffling.
How do you know it's not the lava lamp center?
That's fair. I don't know. Okay. Let's start. Does everyone have paper and like a pen or something? Dan and Yash, I can't see you, so.
I don't have anything.
Oh, can you?
Oh wait,
acquire
Dan,
something?
you're on vacation, right?
Oh, okay. Then don't worry about it.
I have a terrible Wi-Fi connection as well. That's why
Yeah.
my camera isn't on.
Yes, you got some paper and writing utensil. I saw you unmuted for like a second. So.
Guess not.
All right. Well, I'll start kind of slow on the first 10. And then after that, I'll go a bit quicker, I guess.
You have to explain what they're doing.
Oh, you're just writing down these face cards that I'm going to say. Use whatever shorthand works for you. It's just, 13 possible like cards, 4 different suits, if you're familiar with playing cards. But yeah, just try to write them down, use good spacing, leave like room between them basically, and try to be as accurate as possible. Make sure you're writing down exactly the cards that I'm saying. All right, so I guess I can start. All right. 5 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, 2 of clubs, Jack of hearts, 3 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 10 of spades, 3 of clubs, 8 of diamonds, 4 of diamonds. All right, who thinks they have all 10? All right, Emily, read them back.
5 of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, 2 of diamonds, Jack of hearts, 3 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 10 of spades, 3 of clubs, 8 of diamonds, 4 of diamonds.
Cool. I might have misspoke, but did anyone have anything different for any of those?
I had for the third one, I had 2 of clubs.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. I read that wrong.
All right,
It's a
no
suit.
worries. So that was like 2 seconds per card. So I guess let's speed it up to like 1.5 seconds per card. Yeah, that sounds fine. All right, everyone still good? Cool. Let's begin.
Oh, Rajiv, wait. I didn't know. Maybe I've done different. I done it like. So then the next one is to practice like responses. So you'll say like two of clubs, king of diamonds.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can try that. All right, I'll do a random. Yeah. This actually, I like this. Wait, so am I like signposting? Okay.
Yeah.
So for each of these, I'm gonna answer each of the previous cards with 1 to 3 cards. It's gonna vary. And so I'll read a total of 20 cards in this speech, just like most of my speeches.
Nice.
So anyway, yeah, I'll be signposting. So the important part is that you write down the responses that I make in response to each particular card. Okay. So hopefully everyone's ready.
Hopefully everyone left enough space in between.
Yeah,
their
hopefully
cards.
everyone's had enough space. You should have at least enough space for 3 responses. Anyway, first responding to 5 of diamonds, 8 of spades, and 2 of spades. Next, move on to their 6 of diamonds argument. We have just one response, which is 2 of clubs. Move on to their 2 of clubs. We have 3 responses: jack of clubs, queen of hearts, and jack of diamonds. Move on to the jack of hearts argument that they make. We'll respond with 2 arguments: 8 of hearts and 7 of clubs. Move on to the 3 of hearts argument. We'll look at just one analysis here, but it's pretty critical: 7 of spades. Now you're going to want to move on to 8 of diamonds, where you're going to see there are 3 pretty compelling responses: jack of diamonds, 6 of hearts, and 4 of hearts. Move on to 10 of spades. This is pretty damning here because we have queen of spades. That should just be the end of the debate. Move on to 3 of clubs. Here, we're going to look at 2 key responses. First is 9 of hearts, and second, and more importantly, you have 7 of diamonds. Look at their 8 of diamonds argument, where we have 3 pretty good pieces of evidence that beat theirs. First is 5 of diamonds. Second, even if you don't buy that, we have 10 of hearts. And finally, you'll be looking at queen of diamonds. But lastly, look at their 4 of diamonds argument, which is what their entire case hinges on. This completely falls apart once you look at our 2 cards, which are 2 of spades and queen of clubs.
That was like 5 seconds between each thing.
Yeah, I know. But the signposting part was hard. All right, someone want to read them back? Go ahead, Praj.
Probably should muted. Okay, good.
Oh yeah, okay. Answering to the first argument, you said 8 of spades and 2 of spades. Responding to the second argument, you responded with 2 of clubs. Responding to the third argument, you had jack of clubs, queen of hearts, and jack of diamonds. Responding to the fourth argument, you had 8 of hearts and 7 of clubs. Responding to the fifth argument, you only had the 7 of spades, which is pretty damning. Responding to the next argument, you had jack of diamonds, 6 of hearts, and 4 of hearts. Responding to the next argument, you had queen of spades. Responding to the next one, you had 9 of hearts and 7 of diamonds. Responding to the next one, you had 5 of diamonds, 10 of hearts, and queen of diamonds. And responding to the last one, you had 2 of spades and queen of clubs.
Yep, I think that's all right. All right, just for the actual utility of this drill, I'm just gonna read them straight down. You don't have to worry about responses for this next one. So I guess I'll start with one where I'm doing 1 card every 1.5 seconds, hopefully.
No, every 1 second. Come on, Rajiv, you can do
Well,
it.
I'll ease them into it, all right, hopefully
Go
everyone.
full tilt.
No, hopefully everyone is ready. I'll begin. King of hearts, 9 of spades, queen of spades, ace of spades, 8 of diamonds, jack of hearts, 10 of hearts, 5 of clubs, 6 of spades, queen of hearts. Who has it? Someone who's not. Okay, Silas.
King of hearts, 9 of spades, queen of spades, ace of spades, 8 of diamonds, jack of hearts, 10 of hearts, 5 of clubs, 6 of spades, and queen of
Queen of hearts, yep. All right, cool. Let's up the ante. One card every second. This might be more difficult, but we'll do it anyway. I'll begin soon. All right.
Yeah, this will be our last one.
This will be our last one. I was going to do one more.
I think we should.
All
this
right,
is-
sure. Yeah, this can
yeah,
be our
okay.
last one. All right. Ready? I'll start. Ace of clubs, 9 of clubs, queen of hearts, queen of diamonds, 2 of diamonds, king of diamonds, 4 of clubs, ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, 10 of spades. Anyone think they have it? That was more like 0.9 or 0.8 per card. Jackson, you close, you think?
I had a 4-second loss because I was texting Anthony, so I was trying to keep a buffer in my head, and the buffer ran out, and I think I missed one of them in the
Oh,
middle.
sad. Well, anyway, that's probably the maximum pace that you'd ever have to flow something in a round. So yeah, that's a fun drill.
I can try to say most of them.
All right, try.
Ace of clubs, 9 of clubs, queen of hearts, queen of diamonds, king of diamonds, 2 of diamonds. Then I skipped 1 or 2. Ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, 10 of spades.
Yeah, you flipped. You skipped only one, but you flipped the king of diamonds and 2 of diamonds.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, shoot. Anthony's like, hey, do you want to play video games? So I'm like, no, I'm busy. I'm like, oh, shoot, I am busy right now.
Yeah. Well. All right.
Go as fast as you can.
As fast as that'd be intimidating.
No, the thing is, probably you've heard people full spread in policy, and the thing is, if you had to write as fast as they were spreading, no
That's
one
what
can
that
do
girl did, though. That was kind of mean.
What?
At SDI,
Oh yeah.
she straight up
like-
went full. She's
Dude, imagine you were just spreading tags, right? But the tags were 2 words. You would
Yeah.
never be able to flow that. So
all right. So that's an example of how you
Yeah.
can flow. Oh, I guess we can. I don't know, Sid. When are
Yeah,
we planning
Sid
on?
needed-
What's the plan?
yeah,
Uh,
how long are we going for?
Yeah, so the plan was every do 1.5 in between 1.5 and 2 hours.
Okay.
So I would cross-ex is pretty. We can do cross-ex pretty quick. We can do a small overview of it. Tomorrow, then we can start the day off with trying to have them practice flowing a natural thing from a speech, and then
Yeah.
do practice cross-ex with it, and then go on to the K2 stuff.
Cool. That sounds good. All right. Let me know if. Okay. Yeah.
Should we maybe explain framework just quickly for the people who weren't here yesterday, Daniel and
Yeah.
Yash.
Sure.
oh gosh.
Yeah, I guess
Um,
we can quickly recap it. So within Lincoln Douglas, which again is the focus of this room, debate is sort of divided into 2 levels. One of which talks about what impact or what things are important when the judge makes their decision. So what should we value and how do we know that we're achieving that particular value? So a value can be either very vague, something like morality, or something very specific, like say positive peace against Silas Aki. Because I like that case, that's why. All right, anyway. So it can be specific or vague. And then a value criterion is basically just a way of measuring it, right? So it's a criterion, right? Something which you have to fulfill in order to meet something. So we know that we're meeting our value of morality based on a standard like utilitarianism, which is doing the most good for the greatest number. So that would just be one example of a framework. And framework is important in LD because debates are often about ethics. And so you first have to determine by debating with your opponent basically which way the judge should view the debate, which moral philosophy they should adopt. And then second, you look at the substance. How does the resolution, right, which we're trying to prove true or false, how does that, is that true or false based on that particular moral framework? That's framework in 30 seconds. But yeah, I guess we can talk about cross-ex now.
Oh shoot. Yeah. Okay. So let me just go back to where
Yeah, this is a good
how the round is set up. So in LB, there are only 2 cross-exes, and essentially, think of it like an interrogation, and answer it like you're being interrogated. So the goal of cross-examination is to, if you don't understand something about your opponent's case, have them clarify it for you. It is way harder to respond to something you do not understand than it is to respond to something you do understand. Even if it's like something you're getting for the first time, making sure you have a good grasp of it is like important to making sure you can respond to it. So if you need to use cross-ex for clarification, by all means do that. If you think you have a handle on what the other team said, then your goal for cross-ex is essentially to force them into corners, try to pick apart their case, while at the same time, if you want to ask questions to try to set up the arguments you know you're going to make in the negative constructive, cross-ex can also be used with that. So let's say you have some argument which is like, yada, 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 because US and China are rivals, they go to war, right? And you have like some reason for why like voting affirmative will cause this to happen. If you just want to use cross-ex to get something out of the way, like yes or no, are US and China rivals? Like they'll probably say yes to that because it's like a general fact about the world. However, if you just said it in your speech, they might be like, oh, I have this random piece of evidence that says they aren't. So being able to get them to agree to just like what you consider basic facts about the world can be really useful for setting up your own arguments.
Yeah.
But at the same time, drilling down into theirs. I know yesterday we did some stuff with thought experiments. So oftentimes cross-examination can include those when you're like asking about framework. You're like, oh, in this hypothetical situation, what would your framework say to do? So if you can like think of a situation in which their framework says that we should do something that like a vast majority of humans find morally repugnant, then ask them that. And they're kind of forced to what's called a double bind. Either they defend their framework or they say something that most people disagree with, which is going to make it way harder for the judge to like say, yes, this is a framework that I think we should judge the round based off of.
Yeah. I think that, cross-ex can be, cross-ex it'll just be different based on like, what the debate looks like. And, your level of comfort, I think, with the topic and with the arguments that you're making. Cross-ex is a really great place, I think, to show off your knowledge of a topic. So if the affirmative is making like a very specific nuanced argument, if you appear as though you're more knowledgeable than them about their argument, that can be really helpful. Like if they're reading some argument about elections in Taiwan and you're like, well, did you see the poll this morning that showed that Tsai Ing-wen was going to win by 30 points? That, that's maybe a very specific example. But it can be a good place to just establish your credibility, your ethos as a speaker, in addition to all these strategic things that like are pretty important as well.
Yeah. And knowing yourself and knowing what like areas that you have interest in, that you are like, oh, I know a lot about this, so I'm going to ask about this. What's it?
I think that's also
this from Emily. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good thing in debate in general. You should try to like write arguments and make arguments that you're knowledgeable about or comfortable with.
Because everyone has some area of expertise, whether it's like certain parts of science or international relations or domestic politics or like immigration. Like most people have some area where like this is something that I care about outside of the debate space enough so that I'm like more knowledgeable about it than the average person. And especially in like partner debate events, which LD isn't. But when Rajiv and I are crafting, cases and stuff, because in policy, like pretty much anyone can answer a question, anyone on your team, he would take a lot of the philosophical critique, like laden questions, whereas I would take a lot of like the political questions, because that's like where our interests are strong. So if like someone asked us about poll numbers, like Rajiv would know, okay, Jack knows a lot about poll numbers, so he'll answer this. And if someone asked me about like philosophy, I'd cry and say, Rajiv, please answer this, because I have no idea what the answer is.
Yeah. So if either Jackson or I were on our own, he'd be reading a lot of politics dissads, I'd be reading a lot of Ks. But one good part about having a partner is that you can cover for each other's deficiencies sometime, and you can have a really diverse strategy.
Yeah. So in LD, knowing where you are strong and where you're weak is important, so that you can be like, oh, I think I know more about this than this person. So if I ask them questions that I know for a fact are true, that they just don't know the answer to like prove my argument, then that's a really good.
Who said CX isn't binding? Hold up, who made this presentation?
I did.
CX is binding.
Not an LD, right?
Yes, we're gonna strike through that.
Yeah.
I thought LD isn't.
Well, so I would say that if you say something in cross-ex, it's like true. So that's what
Okay.
CX is binding means.
I've had judges like I'll say something that somebody else said and they'll be like CX isn't binding.
Oh, well, never mind. I don't know. I think it probably depends on the way the argument is framed. If
That makes
if you're
sense.
like, is your case an increase in like exports or something like that, and they're like yes, and you read an exports disad and it's like the link is from CrossX, then in that sense CrossX is binding. But yeah, you can't lie in CrossX basically.
Oh, also, this is not related to CrossX, but when Jackson went US, China, yada, 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 go to war, my Google Assistant activated.
Thank you.
Nice.
Okay. I guess one final thing about cross-ex is if you find yourself in the position of being asked stuff that you don't know the answer to, or you know the answer to it, and you know that giving the true answer hurts you, like in the competitive sense, not like the physical sense, then learning how to evade questioning is like important. So
Yeah.
while actual like LD debate might not be very similar to like presidential debates you might see on TV, in which it's just like a ton of people making like non-connected speeches that like not responsive to each other. Sometimes in cross-ex, honing your inner like national politician is important to just like completely evade the question and talk about something totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
And most of the time, your opponent will realize, hey, they're not answering this, so they'll just move on to something else. Try
That's-
not to do that because
yeah.
your judge will also realize that you are evading the question. But if you can give some like flimsy non-answer and hope your opponent moves on, that's always an option.
That's also why you should ask really specific and pointed questions that prevent your the person you're cross-examining from speaking in paragraphs. Because you have a limited time for cross-ex, you want to ask them a lot of things. So don't give them an opportunity to spend 2 minutes talking about, giving a summary of their entire case. Just, keep it short. Try to design it so that they can't ramble.
Yeah, feel free to cut them off. Don't let your opponent turn cross-ex into another 3-minute speech for them. So when I've seen novice debaters be like, so could you tell me again why voting AF is a good idea? And then the affirmative is like, wow, I can't believe you asked that. I would love to tell you for 3 minutes more why the AF is a good idea after I already did that for 6 minutes.
Should I try to do that if I'm being questioned? Should that be my
Yes.
goal? To try to spend as much time as possible?
Your goal
Yeah.
should be spend as much time as possible either not answering the question or answering the question in such a way that it furthers your points.
Yeah.
Because also typically, especially with like more when the round isn't on the flow as much and parents just taking notes, the more times you say something, the more the judge will believe it.
Yeah. When I judge debates, I pay very little attention to cross-ex.
Yeah.
That's just because I'm a flow-oriented judge.
Oh yeah, if something does happen in cross-ex, bring it up in rebuttal. You can't just assume
Yeah.
the judges know, because some judges will not pay attention to cross-ex at all.
Yeah. Also, one thing, like, I know that in a lot of, again, like, your conception of debate may be like, okay, the debate is going to evolve as time goes on, through the debate, and it should always be valid for me to sort of like bring up like new points that support my particular argument. But a general rule of thumb in debate is that unless an argument is a response to a new argument by your opponent, you should not really be making any new arguments after a certain point in the debate. They should simply be arguments which are like in previous speeches that you're extending, you're clarifying, you're showing how they still stand in spite of your opponent's responses. And that has to do with the rules of debate and the rules of flowing. But we don't have to dwell on that. That's just also probably an important distinction.
Okay. Do you want us to keep going in the presentation, Sid, or do you just want to wrap up a bit?
Only thing left is the practice with that speech. So I'm going to check on. Oh yeah. So I don't know. For the first couple ones, I created it's 3-question, Google form.
Yeah.
To see see where we're if what concepts we're lacking on. So do you guys think we should do that? We can try it for the first couple of days.
Yeah, no, sure. I think that's a good idea.
See where it goes. Yeah, I'll post the link in the Discord. don't spend 30 minutes on it. Like, if you don't know an answer, just put like I don't know, and we'll just talk about it more tomorrow. Yeah, I'll check with PF and speech, see what's happening, and then
Okay.
if you can, if you
Yeah,
know any,
I was recording, so I can. Probably
yeah, if you know any good cross X's,
I know some great cross X's.
yeah,
But a lot of them are kind of strange. We'll still do them.
I'll check
Yeah.
in on other groups.
Wait,
Okay.
Jackson, can you pull up Harvard BOSU just like any round? Also, if
Do you
like
want to
we
do this? Do you want to do this tomorrow?
like maybe, but also like we have free time now. Yeah, it's BOSU,
Oh,
or it might just be Harvard BS sometimes. Debate, yeah.
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 Really?
Well, you didn't type debate the first time. Oh,
I think
also,
I've seen
yeah,
this round
if we say
before.
something that's confusing, we want you to interrupt. Yeah, cross X's in this debate are pretty great. I would probably start at cross X of the 1NC.
Okay, so what's that? That's gonna be on my.
Or wait, go to cross X of the 1AC first, because I'm not sure what he asked about.
This is policy. You don't have to speak this fast.
Yeah.
This is after the 1AC.
No, I think the round hasn't started yet. Is the audio streaming?
It should be. No one's. I think it's just muted right now because no one's talking. Yeah, let me go to a part where people are talking. Can you hear that?
No.
No. I don't know how to share audio.
Rip.
Sorry. Wait.
Rajiv, you try on your computer.
All right, sure. I'll hijack this.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Okay, wait.
Am I still sharing mine or no?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Switch. All right. Oh, leave.
What?
Never mind. Okay, let's see. Let's see if you guys can just hear. Oh wait, no, I'm only sharing this screen. So.
What's the poem, Rajiv?
Oh, it is. There are a lot of good quotes from Guru Lahima, but I think the one I was looking for was. Wait, where's the round? Okay, yeah, the one I was looking for was. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go to it because I don't have it. Let go your earthly tether, enter the void empty, and become wind.
Well, why is there Legend of Korra? I'm confused.
Can you guys hear that?
No.
Okay, rip.
Okay. Well,
All right. Wait,
I had
let's.
some stuff.
Yeah.
I had some stuff I just wanted to say about debate in general, which is that primarily for the new people and for the people coming up from DMS. I don't know what the season's going to be like this year. COVID, everything is up in the air right now. I imagine it's going to be a lot more online tournaments, a lot more online meetings, lessons. Even if we're in person at school, Mr. Matuziak said there's a very high chance they don't allow after school meetings because that would like break the contact tracing measures that they have set up. We're sure trying to keep people like together throughout the school day. I would normally my pitch would be it's a ton of fun. You get to go on a lot of trips with your friends and like eat at hotels and like stay up till like way too late.